Okay, I got asked the question today. Is there a third-party backup solution that we recommend for Microsoft 365? The client wants to back up SharePoint and Teams files as well as some of their email mailboxes. So my answer to that is meh. No. There are third-party backup services, but they don't give people anything valuable, I don't think. And I'll try to explain why here. So first off, let's talk about where data is in Microsoft 365. If you're in Canada, our data is in two locations currently, Toronto and Quebec City. So that's these data centers are sisters or siblings to each other. So if your data is in one center, it's also replicated to the other and vice versa if one goes down. So that gives us our disaster recovery and business continuity. What is data? Data is in SharePoint. It's the SharePoint sites themselves and their files and pages. In Microsoft Teams, as far as SharePoint is concerned, it's the files, and OneDrive for Business, again, files. So, of all of this, probably the easiest to do a backup and restore is SharePoint. But we're going to talk about why, you don't actually get any value, I think, really, from having third party. And we've had third party backups for our SharePoint Exchange for now 8 years and never used it once. So there's something. Exchange, you're going to restore email or you're going to restore shared mailboxes. And then there's also just stuff that wouldn't get covered that people might assume are part of SharePoint or Exchange or Teams, which is Power Automate, Power BI, Power Apps, Planner, etc. So like if you store tasks in Planner and you back up SharePoint and you're engaging with them in SharePoint, that's still not SharePoint, still not getting backed up. When we're talking about the data in Microsoft 365, this is kind of the data or the data at rest that we're talking about. So what Microsoft 365 protections exist? Well, we've got disaster recovery and business continuity. So that's those two data centers. That's something that's inbuilt and we don't need to do anything else with that. We have versioning and item retention. So you can have a mailbox be retained for X amount of time before you delete it or after you deleted it. Or items in a mailbox you can recover from the recycle bin of that mailbox as well. And same with SharePoint. You can have the site recycle bin, which is 32 days, and then the site collection recycle bin, which is 93 days, 31 times 3 months. And you've got versioning within SharePoint as well. So that's your OneDrive for Business, that's Teams, and that's SharePoint. So you've got lots of copies of all this data. So unless someone's going out of their way to delete something and hard delete it, it's not going to go away. And then we have recycle bins, again, in Exchange, but also in SharePoint as well. So what do third-party backups can do? Well, you can restore files from SharePoint sites. So if you had a SharePoint site and a couple of files went missing, you'd be able to use a third-party tool, and if they've got a copy of it, they're going to very easily be able to restore a file back. As I say, though, never done that once, and that's because SharePoint's already got recycle bins, we've got version history, and for the most part, we don't delete stuff really anymore because we have unlimited storage. So the need to restore a file from some other place back to Microsoft is extremely rare, and really that's the only thing you can restore. We'll see in a second. And then, third-party mailbox or backups, you can restore a mailbox back to it was. What this won't do is restore mail connectivity. So if Exchange is down, if Microsoft is down, this is not going to allow those people to route mail somewhere else where Microsoft is down. So if you're recovering a mail or some things from a mailbox, that means it's defeated every other mechanism that Exchange has. And really, for the most part, mail doesn't go missing that way if you manage your organization properly. So third-party backups usually can't. Now, I've not looked at third-party backup tools much. I almost never do because the story doesn't change, because realistic when you think about what they need to architect and how often they'd have to keep on top of Microsoft changes, it's not even feasible really as something to do. So in SharePoint, a third-party backup can't restore a site or portions of one. So you're like, crap, I blew up the site a week ago and I need to just restore 3 pages, but not this and not that. You're not going to have that kind of granularity. You're either going to roll back pages, which you can do in SharePoint, or you're going to roll back files, which you can do in SharePoint. But rolling back the site and portions of it is just not something that a third-party backup vendor can do, because they have to replicate the entire site somewhere else and somehow finagle it back. So it doesn't happen. So they can't roll back changes to these sites. And you also can't run SharePoint somewhere else. So this is the one thing I hear a lot is like, we need a backup of the cloud so that if the cloud is down, we can keep working. Well, that's not how these services work. These services will allow you to go and recover a file. So if SharePoint was down and it was down for a week, that might be the one time you're like, oh crap, let's go to our backups and grab these 2 files and work on them offline. But it's just not what happens. If SharePoint is down for a week, there is a bigger problem in the world. And we're probably not actually worried about a couple of files. So, you can't run SharePoint somewhere else just because you have a backup. You could have in the old days when you built a SharePoint farm and built a backup SharePoint farm, you could restore from one to the other. That's not how this works online, and that's not how these third-party products work. They haven't built a separate Microsoft cloud or data center to mimic what Microsoft's doing. Same for Teams. You're not going to be able to, generally not going to be able to restore chats because those are actually stored in Exchange, or it's being re-architected, but it's still just not part of it. And so you're just restoring files. The same thing. You could restore some files missing from a team if it had somehow missed every other possible way to get it. But you're not going to be able to just bring Teams online because the cloud is offline. If the cloud is down, if Microsoft is down, if Azure is down, Teams is down, go have a coffee. You're not restoring Teams somewhere else for a day to keep working. It just doesn't work that way. You're not going to be able to restore a team or a channel. And you're not going to be able to run Teams somewhere else. So why are you backing it up? It's already replicated to each data center. We're just talking about files. And finally, Exchange. You could restore a mailbox. You could store the items in a mailbox. And that's, again, if you've defeated mailbox item retention and everything else. But really, at the end of the day, people want to know their mail is going to keep running when they're down. Well, an Exchange backup is not covering that scenario, which is actually usually what people are asking for. So, just my 2 cents, but I would never spend a penny on third-party backups unless it was one of these really fine details, like the one scenario is to recover a file that someone had gone out of their way 17 ways to Sunday to delete. At that point, you should be firing that person. Like, that person's got malicious behavior. But good luck even figuring out which file is missing because it'll be gone. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.